Welcome to the reality show Life Coach Podcast. I'm your host, certified life coach Lynn Grogan. Today, we're going to talk about season 45, episode 3 of Survivor. With me today, I have a special guest and repeat podcast, Lauren Rapaport. Lauren, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, thanks so much for having me back. I'm Lauren. I'm a huge fan of Survivor. It's literally one of my favorite shows in the world. I am a life coach. I help people who are struggling to cope with type 1 diabetes. I've had it for 44 years. I help them to get unstuck, heal, and learn to love their lives living with type 1 diabetes.
Yes. And okay, I know, and this is why I thought of you for this podcast because you're filling in today. Thank you for filling in today.
No problem.
Um, You had said at the end when you came on for The Bachelorette that like you would love to be on Survivor, but that you had actually sent in on an audition video, not for Survivor, but for Big Brother. And I was like, I'm fascinated because I've been asking all my guests, like, would you apply to be on Survivor? And you have a good reason not to, but I also want to hear about what it was like to send in an audition video for Big Brother.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Actually, I've always said that my ultimate dream is to be on Survivor, but they wouldn't accept me because of diabetes. Like, there's just no way you can be on Survivor with diabetes. But now, if I'm really honest with myself, I'm just too freaking old. Like, I'd be like, I have bad knees. I have a bunion on my left foot. Like, there's just no way I could actually be on Survivor. So I thought that Big Brother would be a great alternative because I do also love Big Brother. And my friend Lynn, who's amazing at editing, helped me do my Big Brother audition. It started with the worm, to be honest with you. I did
What?
the
Like the dance move?
like the dance
No.
move. I swear to God, I did the worm, jumped up, and I'm like, "Hi, I'm Lauren, and you need me on Big Brother." That's how it started. I swear to God. I was 32 years old. It was a little while ago.
So do you still have a copy of this? Like,
I'm
can you
sure I do. I'm sure I do. It's kind of famous among my group of friends, like that whole audition video that circulated for a little while.
Well, I feel like I'm in the group of friends. I'm like, I'm demanding to see this video.
I'll find it somewhere.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, because I've been asking guests if they would audition, and I was like, I'm kind of at a point where like with my first guest, Carrie Marshall, she and I were like, okay, yes, we're daring each other to do it. And like last week with my guest, Kristen, we were both like, oh my God, it would be like in high school doing sports and gym class. And I was like, I don't know. So I'm going to keep mulling this over as we go
Okay.
along in this season because I don't know. Watching the things this week, like if I did a quick recap, I mean, that food reward and their immunity challenge, like I don't know. There were just so many aspects of it. I'd be like, I would be the weakest link. I already know. And maybe this is a terrible mindset to have about it, but I think I would be.
That's how I feel about watching Brandon like have panic attacks in almost every one of his challenges. I was like, I kind of feel like that'd be me. I feel like I would like shut down in every single challenge, even though I want to be on it. I feel like if I'm being really, really honest, I think I would like have like the pressure to get to me in every challenge. So
Mm-hmm. Might be me too. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, so this episode 3, we're like getting into it. We have, of course, idol searching. They have the first challenge, which is a food reward, and with a bonus camp raid where they send somebody to one of the other camps to raid all their goodies. Um, Yellow Team Lulu finally wins like anything. This is the first time
I
they've
know.
won anything on the show. They get the all of the fruit, which I'm like, I don't know what that's gonna do to their digestive system since they haven't eaten in a while, and that's a lot of fruit, but whatever. Reba gets second place, and from the Lulu team, Caleb is the one who goes on the camp raid. They decide that he's the most social one, and I know we're gonna talk a little bit about him later. And he has one gift to give, which is a restore the vote, which he gives to Drew. And yeah, I mean the whole thing seems to be pretty like positive, other than that he steals their fishing gear.
I thought Drew was an interesting choice. Like I always think it's fascinating. Like you don't know like who's connecting with who and like it's hard to watch from the outside, but I guess it's all about like chemistry and connection, but I just thought it was interesting he chose Drew. What did you think?
Well, it was interesting. Drew's strategy in general is interesting. So like I don't know if it was last week or the week before. Drew has just been very upfront with everybody and anyone about all the stuff that he's won. He's just like, I have this advantage and this happened and that happened. And so like that's like the first thing that he tells Caleb when Caleb takes, people off to the side to just in quotes get to know them, which is really try to see who will tell him the dirt. And that's like Drew's just like, yeah, I have this advantage. And then you see like Caleb reciprocate by saying, okay, I've got this advantage. I'm going to give it to you. So I don't know. I mean, I guess it's like a strategy that seems to be working out for Drew, but I've been skeptical because I'm like, don't tell everybody everything. Like, hold some
Yeah.
stuff back, man.
Yeah, right? Yeah, I guess it worked for him, but I just thought that was a really interesting pick.
I did too. I
Mm.
don't know. I guess because it's even though they haven't had a chance to like sit down and talk to each other, you still observe everyone. Like, when you're at the challenges, you still see like what the dynamics are going on. So I guess maybe for whatever reason he got a good vibe off of Drew or thought that he could
Yeah.
work with him or something. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Interesting choice.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think
and then we have at the end of the show, we have the immunity challenge. Yellow loses once again. And then at the tribal council, Sabaya, they have I don't know who you thought was gonna go home. I did not think Sabaya was gonna go home, but she's actually blindsided and she is sent home. Who did you think?
I thought it'd be Caleb.
Yeah,
I thought it was gonna be Caleb.
I did
But
too.
but
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
yeah, I know we're gonna talk about this
Yeah,
too.
we're gonna talk about
I have thoughts about. I was like,
yeah.
how did this? I honestly, like, I just sat there in silence as I watched kind of like how it all went down, and I was like, it's got to be the worst way to leave Survivor because
With
Sabaya
an idol in
does
your pocket, it's the
with.
worst. There's a small club of those people, and she's now in it.
I know, and I was such fanfare because, like, if you watched the show, you would have seen that Sabaya brought this like wax idol essentially to tribal
I
because they haven't had
know.
fire on their in their camp, so she has to melt it down to get her idol out. So it's like this whole little like campfire scene where she's like tending to her idol in the fire, and then it's revealed, and so I guess to I guess to me, I was just like, okay, she's safe now, and that's not what happened.
Just got overconfident, like to just not write out a name to keep that idol longer. It's a bad
Yeah.
call.
Well, all of their idols this season and like the last couple seasons have come with strings attached, like hers in particular. I thought they explained it really well, where basically like you can use it as an idol, straight up normal idol for what the current tribal council, which she could have used it last night. And if you decide to forego using it, you can, but you lose your vote and it extends the like idle the amount of time that you can use the idle. So if you lose your vote once, you get to use it till merge. If you decide to like lose your vote a second time, then you get it till the final five. And so she was thinking she was safe and she wanted to extend the life of the idol. So I mean, it was such a gamble.
Yeah. And I know we'll get into this later. I think they're in just decision overwhelm. There's so many things going on and they just get in complete decision overwhelm,
Yeah. Well,
right?
let's
It's
just
not
go
just,
ahead and talk about that because I do think that like it's a whole I mean that's what marks every single thing in Survivor is like you have to make the next decision and the next decision based on very little information. So, what did you want to say about like
yeah.
her and decisions?
Well, what I think is so interesting about Survivor in general is they're in like their nervous systems are in complete overwhelm, right? First of all, they're starving. Second of all, they're just like complete they're completely stressed out, right? Like your brain perceives danger. Like they're literally in on Survivor. So they're programmed for survival. So they're probably in some sort of fight or flight or freeze or some sort of survival state. And so they're like prefrontal cortex where they're making their like actual like decision making is like probably mostly offline. So they're walking around the show without the ability to make actual like proper decisions. And they're like starving and like, I don't know, other decisions. And so they're not making their best decisions. And now the show, as each season progresses, they're adding more and more and more and more and more decisions. Like you have an idol, oh, but it's only good for this time. Oh, but like then you have to take 10,000 clues and then it doesn't become a real idol. I mean, there's so many decisions that they have to make. And so I think by design, they're just like completely freezing and not making great decisions. So I think
I
it's
think
fascinating.
I think it's fascinating too, because when we're watching at home, we have the logical part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, totally online. We get to see everything that's going on. And
Yes.
so it seems like when you're watching from home, you're like, well, there's an obvious decision to make here. Use your idol. Like you are not safe. But she's and like all the other players are operating from like that more emotional side of their brain. It's like you're not in the driver's seat. You're basically reacting. It's like a whole show versus reactions. And you have to just go based on like this like whatever somebody said to you last, essentially. And
Yeah.
you have to just hope for the best. And so for her, it was interesting to watch because even though like you and I are like watching it going, oh girl, that was not a good decision. You see it now because you're off the game, but she seemed even so confident at the end. Like I thought for sure we were all voting Caleb. I thought for sure this is what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Based on what? Some sort of feeling that she had.
Yeah. Yeah. They're
Yeah.
going on instinct, really.
Yeah. And
Complete
the instinct
instinct.
is faulty. And it's just, I, and I think this is where I am just imagining being on the show, like if tripping with your mind later is because you're so sure or at least like you're 70% sure that that's the decision you're going to make. I mean, not always. I mean, you often see them going, I don't know, I'll write down a name because I have to. But like in this situation, they were like, she's like, yeah. I mean, if there had even been 1% of her that thought she was going home, I think she would have played the idol. So it's like, how do you trust yourself after trust your gut after the fact? If you're like, but I was so sure.
Yeah.
I was so sure.
Yeah.
And the other guy, Sean, on their team, he was obviously so sure it was going to be Caleb. There's no way he would have written down Caleb if he thought that there was even a glimmer of chance it would have been Sabaya because that screws up his game now with Caleb.
Right. Because he didn't read the parchment. So he didn't know that all the strings that were tied to the idol. So he
Mm-mm.
was hung out to dry. I mean, there's just so many moving parts because, again, none of them have their full faculties
No,
that they're
no,
going
and I
at.
don't think we realize that from at home. I mean, even
No.
though you and I are talking about it, we realize it. We don't. You don't realize it until you're in the moment. Because I don't know about you, I don't know that I've ever had a situation like this where it is an extended period of time where your nervous system is this overwhelmed. Have you?
No, not at all. And if you look at Emily's behavior when she first got there, she was in complete fight or flight. She was like like attack mode. Like I mean, she somehow I think Caleb helped her regulate her nervous system a little bit. Like he hugged her. I mean, think about like there's co-regulation, which is like connecting with somebody really helps you regulate your nervous system. He like hugged her and he talked to her and he sort of brought her down. You
Mhm.
almost saw her go from like complete like just overwhelm where she was like a frantic being in the first couple episodes, and then she just sort of like calmed down, and like you saw her growth, and then she became almost like a different person version of herself because Caleb really helped her like regulate a little bit, and then she like she's so much better, and he really helped her with that.
Mhm.
And like
Yeah.
you can see that. And so yeah, so no, to answer your question, I mean, I've certainly been dysregulated, but never in an extreme situation like that.
No, not days after days where you get like no relief
Yeah,
whatsoever.
no sleep, no food, tons
You're
of
cold.
decisions, like Jeff Probst, like pressuring you with questions.
Being in physical challenges where like even on a good day, on your best day, you might not be
Yeah,
able to do it. Like
yeah.
putting a puzzle together when you're
Oh
in this state, like
no,
beyond me, beyond.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, and I wonder if that's one of the reasons that Caleb actually like trusted Emily when Emily came up to him. Cause you see the scene on the show if you watch the show right before tribal council, Emily goes up to Caleb and she's like, I know this is like last minute, but I have to tell you that Sabaya and Sean are voting you. It's
yeah,
you. You have to write down Sabaya's name. You have to trust me on it. And it makes me think that like there's a part of the way that Caleb presents this, like I'm doing this all for Emily and maybe she'll vote for me later. But I think, to your point of like co-regulating, there's a co there. I think that like by calming her down, it did have an impact on him too. Whereas like now they're connected in a different way than they had been before, that he was able to hear her and write down Sabaya's name and thereby like saving himself. Like that, I don't think that would have happened if they hadn't had that moment where they like really bonded and connected in that way.
100%. And I think him showing her some kindness at the beginning where nobody else did ended up saving him in the end. Like
Yeah,
maybe there was some self-serving there. I mean, is Survivor, there is some strategy. Like I'm sure he was like, oh, I can somewhat control her, or I can have her on my side. But I think there was some human kindness there where he reached out to her and, to the co-regulation piece of it. But I think by him showing her kindness, he literally saved himself.
I think so too. And I think that was genuine on both of their sides because you
Yeah.
don't see like interviews with them later is like, heh, heh, heh. Like
Yeah.
you sometimes see like the devious
Yes.
side come out where you're like, I got
Yes.
her.
Yes, and I think the authenticity was totally there. And I
Yeah.
think it was really cool to watch for sure.
Very cool to watch because I don't know, often on reality shows there's like language around like and then my walls went up. Like, oh, and like I was open and vulnerable and all of these things, and then my walls went up. And you can kind of see on the show the people who are like still like walls are up because they haven't really been tested, or they can still put forth their personas, which is basically at this point the other two tribes. And you pointed it out, like kind of as we were talking before the show, it's like they haven't been tested yet. They haven't gone tribal yet. So they're all kumbaya. We're having this great time. We love each other. We trust each other. This is great. There's a little bit of like strategy talk amongst themselves, but not to this extent. And to like in that regard, like a lot of their walls still all up. They can still play the game that they maybe strategized ahead of time. But yellow team doesn't have that anymore. Like they all their chips are out at this point.
That's totally, I feel like the red and blue tribe are playing or having a totally different experience than the yellow tribe. I mean, they are playing two different Survivor games right now. And as we can see in the previews, like they're about to like change it all up. And like it's just like a different game for them. And I almost feel like Caleb and Emily and Sean, like, I mean, I think there's a lot more game to play, but it's like, are the three of them more deserving of winning? Like
Mm,
they've had to play a much harder game, right? Like from day one. But
yeah.
I know there's still a lot more Survivor to play, but I feel like they've had to battle it out like the whole time. And I'm sure if one of the three of them make it to the end, that's probably gonna come up. I feel like it always
I would
does.
think so. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, you can see this most prominently at the end of the immunity challenge where the other two tribes go away and Jeff pauses the yellow team before they go back. And he says to Emily, like, what is it like right now? Like, what is it like? And she talks about like these other tribes don't know what it's like to be us. Here they are celebrating and they don't know that we're about to do this most heartbreaking thing by sending somebody home. Like, and I don't think they even really realize the red and the blue team, the impact that they had on the yellows team by cheering and yay, we got this. And it's not like they're being poor sportsmen. They just don't know. They just don't know like them being super positive and excited
Yeah.
around people who are doing one of the hardest things, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
ever.
and I never thought about the emotional toll of voting somebody out that you have bonded with. Because it's not they don't want to do that. They don't want to vote somebody out. You just have to do it. And
Mm.
I never thought about that. And I don't know if you saw that moment when the immunity challenge had ended, both tribes walked away, and somebody on one of the tribes, I forget his name. I don't know all the names
Is it
yet.
Bruce?
No, it wasn't Bruce. It was somebody else turned around and he's like, oh God, and what did he say? I have to stream it. I don't have DVR, so I can't rewind.
Yeah.
But
What was the sentiment though?
he turned around and he's like, sorry for your loss, or like, take it easy, guys, or he's shoot, this is not a very good story. He said something and it was really, really touching. Yeah,
You'll think of it later. I know
I'll
it's
think
like
of it
always that's
later.
like you'll text me in three
It
hours
was
and be like, oh, it was
I
that
will.
guy.
It was so heartwarming. He's just like, take it easy, guys, or like, sorry for your loss. It was so good. But
Like even
anyway,
acknowledging that,
yeah,
like,
just
hey, while we are
acknowledging how
celebrating,
tough. Yeah. It was really,
I
really heartwarming.
I think if done right, that could probably have a really big impact of just like, because right now, Emily, what she's speaking about is I feel very disconnected from those people because they don't know the impact that we're, like the situation we're about to be in.
Yeah.
I think it was the first episode I've been listening to the official Survivor podcast, the
Yeah.
On Fire with Jeff Probst, and they were talking about that Bruce, after like one of the challenges, was like dancing off and like really like being in there, like I don't think the viewers at home necessarily recognize this, but if you were on set, if you're one of the tribe members who lost, like that is like rubbing it in your face.
Yeah.
And they're like, they probably went back to camp and they don't show it, but they were probably like, oh my God, that Bruce guy is terrible, right? Like, even if you don't know that you're making an impact on other people, you really are, because
Yeah.
they're observing you. You don't have to talk directly to somebody for them to have an impact on you. So, I mean,
Absolutely.
I think that's something about the game I didn't really realize until I've started to like analyze it from this podcast point of view of like, oh wow, what would that feel like?
Yeah.
Awful.
It's like winning with grace, right? You can win with grace, you can lose with grace. I mean, you know, it's just showing up in a kind way, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens because you're absolutely right. Like the tribes who have not gone to tribal council, they like they seem loyal to each other, but they haven't really been tested. They haven't gone through a
Mm-hmm.
major loss with each other. They haven't really like had any like arguments or fights or real strategy talks. And so
Yeah. They
we'll
haven't
see who's
really
actually
played.
loyal.
Yeah, yeah. They haven't had to play yet. I feel like this dynamic happens when one tribe keeps losing. Um,
Mhm.
and then the other tribes will show up because they have to, but not until they have to.
Next week, apparently.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Cause
exactly.
I mean, next week they'll mix it up. I mean, it's going to be, I'm assuming 5, 5, and 5 based on the number of people left,
Or two tribes.
or two tribes.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think there's 15 total. So I'm like, I hope it's three again, just
Oh.
so, they have a sense of what it's like. I mean, somebody
Yeah,
has to be on the losing tribe. That's the
yeah.
way it's designed.
And then
So
you can't hide. When there's three tribes, it's much harder to hide.
totally. And so at the end of the show, you see the preview that Emily's excited about it, but we'll see. I'm sure red and blue are going to be like, oh gosh, what's about to
Yeah,
happen?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So you had brought up another point. So when we were doing the recap, we talked about the tribe raid where one cast member, Caleb, got to go over to, I think, did he go to the red tribe, Reba? And they talk a lot about people, like the reason Caleb was sent is his tribe really was like, he's the most social and personable. He's going to get the most information. But that was not how he was received. How was he received on the red tribe?
Well, I thought it was so interesting. Yes, I thought he was be like the best ambassador because he's so social. And I thought he was received like kind of, I don't know the exact words they used, but like salesy, like a smooth operator. Like they kind of saw through him. And like which I thought was really interesting because, and I was just kind of wondering, like, is that a dangerous player or somebody more of a dangerous player like Brando? Because everyone loves Brando because he's so genuine. He's actually genuine and he gets along with everybody. He gets along with the guys, he gets along with the girls. So is a Brando, and we I mean we can think of so many players like him. Is that more dangerous, like somebody who's like kind of like a Carson from like last season, right?
Mhm.
Like somebody who actually just gets along with everybody, or somebody who's a little bit more schmoozy, salesy, because those kinds of people do get by. So I just thought that was interesting because I don't think he was as ambassadory as they thought he was going to be.
Well, and I think that speaks to when you spend a lot of time with somebody versus
Yes.
like just meeting somebody on that first impression. Cause I mean, essentially, this is all of their
Yeah.
first impression.
Yeah.
Um, well, and I think though in the Yellow Tribe, the way that they phrased it was like, well, by default, Caleb is the most social because we're all kind of awkward and quiet.
That's so
So
true. That's so true. Like compared to all of them.
Well, and I think I've had experiences like this. Like I consider myself pretty like social, like amongst like the humans that I know. I'm not like that shy or whatever. But man, I get into a new group of people and suddenly I'm this like different person. I'm like, who am I? Why am I doing these things? Why am I being so weird? And so it's possible that they know him almost like a family member at this point. They've spent such,
Yeah.
even though it's only 7 days, like they speak of it as if it's been months almost. And they're just like, "Oh, yeah, of course Caleb's gonna show up in the same way we know him." And he shows up and it's all like, all right, game on. Business Caleb shows up. I think he's actually
Yeah.
a sales guy. I think maybe that's his role, like software sales or something.
Yeah. But I also think he lacks like a social awareness. Like I like the fact that he thought he was being so smooth, like so um what's the word? Like winning them over, and he was not aware of the fact that he wasn't, I think is maybe going to hurt him, or is you know, maybe
Yeah.
going to be
Well,
his detriment.
I think this is really great editing on the show's part too,
But
because it
that's
doesn't
true.
matter. Whatever somebody says, I think I'm doing this. Then the
He'll
very
show
next shot
evidence.
is just like, we see you're looking for that idol. We see what you're up to. Like it's like it's genius editing on their
It's
part
so
because
true.
it just I think it helps for us as an audience member to frame our thinking because really, I mean, that's what editing is. It's like basically they decide how they want the audience to think and feel about the cast members on the show. And so they are obviously framing it that way because it's like, well, he thinks he's being like this, but everybody else thinks that. So but yeah, they saw right through him. But you're right, like somebody like Brando, who's very like under the radar, is smooth. Like I don't think people even realize that Brando and I don't remember the
Kelly.
cat Kelly.
Kelly.
Yeah. I don't think they realize that they're a duo. They've done such a good
Mm,
job of like playing the middle of that tribe, and nobody even recognizes that they're not 100% guys versus girls on that tribe.
totally. I love that. I love that duo.
I do too.
I feel like they're like two to watch, which I'm excited about.
I know. Well, that's why I'm excited about next week because
Yeah.
it has been swayed so much to the yellow team. Like, if you were
Mm,
just watching this, you'd be like, well, it's probably somebody from the yellow tribe who wins this whole show because they've been focused so much on them. So I'm excited to get to know like the other cast members from the other tribes.
totally. I feel like that's how it always is if there's a tribe that just loses, but then the other two tribe will get air. The other two tribes will get airtime once they start going to tribal council.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
impact do you think losing that much has on somebody's entire game?
Gosh, that's a really good point. I wish I am totally a super fan, but I don't have the best memory. I feel like if somebody were
Me
like
either.
a great super fan with like the best memory, they'd be like, well, so and so who lost every season and then won would be able to pull that out. But I don't have that kind of memory. But what was your question again? Sorry,
Well, it's
engineering
just
edit
like
this out.
I think, yeah, it's almost like what impact do you think losing has on somebody's entire game? And I don't think it's any one way, like I don't think it's
Yeah,
like, oh, and then they're screwed for the rest of the show.
I think I think it could be an advantage. I think if you have, I think it could wear, I think it could be a disadvantage, but it could actually place such a huge toll on you that it could break you down and wear you out. But I also think it could be an advantage where you sort of like learn how to you learn the tricks and the trade of tribal council. Um,
That could be. Yeah. Do
yeah.
you think it has any impact on I'm just thinking about the yellow team. I look at somebody like Caleb and I was like, you know what? In Caleb's everyday life, he probably thinks about himself as a winner. Like he probably played sports and did really well. He's a very athletic guy versus somebody on Brandon, who was on that team, who was voted out last week, where he doesn't seem like that he has that similar mindset. Like he kind of seems like maybe a glass half empty guy, like where maybe like, yeah, life kind of works out for me, but not always. Like I wonder, and that's just my perception on who knows how he thinks about himself. But it makes me wonder if you go into the show with like thinking about yourself as a certain way,
Mm,
if you almost have a situation where you lose a lot, where you're like, this is very confusing. I'm somebody who wins. Like,
yeah.
I guess like I don't know, maybe I wonder if that impacts you at all in terms of how you turn it around when it becomes like post merge and you're flying solo. Like, I don't know, you're right. Like, I almost want to go back and like see what happens to losing tribes if like there's some people that just like continue the losing streak or some people that like bolster some
Or there's,
resilience or something.
yes, or there are people who create the losing streak.
Oh, say more.
Like someone who tends to have like a, um, I don't want to say, I don't love the word victim mentality, but maybe it kind of like creates their outcome, and um
Oh,
is
like if they're like, oh, bad things always happen to me.
bad,
Well,
like, oh,
see, here I am
see,
on
right,
Survivor. Bad things.
exactly, who just, like law of attraction, who just sort of always create their negative outcome, and so end up always on the losing tribe.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Well, as you were
possibly.
talking, as you were talking, I was also thinking about it. I was listening to Humor in Labs podcasts a couple weeks ago, just another podcast, and he was talking about how motivated we can be when people don't think we can do it. And he's just like, it's a weird strategy, but it's like we can be highly motivated if everybody's like, well, I don't think you can make it. I don't think you can win. I think these other people are going to win. Like how motivated we can be by that. It's just like scientifically has been proven. And I was like, well, for some people, it might just be along those lines of just like, well, I'm an underdog and now look at me. I'm going to show them. I do think that's like motivational for some people on
Yeah.
Survivor.
I mean, you look at Chris. Did you watch Chris's season? The one exile who was voted out like second, and then he was on the exile
Yes.
island, and then came back and won. I mean,
Yes.
some people
Yeah.
say he's the least deserving survivor, but I think he was incredibly deserving, because he had to win challenge after challenge after challenge after challenge after challenge just to come back. And then he like took himself out. Then he like put himself in the fire making challenge. I mean, think about the mental
Yeah.
fortitude to have to do that.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. I think being on a losing tribe, some people, I think it shows sink or swim. And I think for the people who will push to swim, it's going to help them to the end.
Yeah, I think I mean, I think so too. I think it could build resilience. And like if somebody is
Yeah.
looking for that, I also think in this like new era of Survivor, being on a losing tribe for that long and being able to come back from that is such a good story to tell at the end.
Yes. And I know what I was going to say 100% what you just said. And if you are a true Survivor fan, like a true Survivor fan, you want to play Survivor. So, like, I'm sure you don't want to win while you're in the moment. I mean, I'm sure
Um,
you don't want to lose while you're in the moment, but like, you're freaking playing Survivor. You're tribal council after tribal council after tribal council. You are playing Survivor. So, it's kind of like to your point, it is an incredible story. So like, even though
yeah.
it's not fun in the moment, like there's no better story than that. You are freaking playing Survivor the whole time.
Yes. And I think every single thing that happens, if somebody was like, well, is it good or bad that that happened? It's just like, it just is. And now you get to decide how you want to use that element of the game. Is it good or bad that you guys lost that one? Well, how do you want to spin it? It could be the most
Yes.
amazing thing. And I think that's what is hard to see as somebody who's watching because we're just seeing the edited down version of something, but like every single time, decision after decision, things that happen after things that happen. And now it's all like elements of the game. It's just like, okay, now I have all these Lego pieces. What kind of like figurine do I want to make with all the pieces that I have?
100%. If I'm in the
Yeah.
final two though, and I'm a yellow tribe person and a blue tribe person, rather be the yellow person. 1,000%.
Hmm.
This is your
Yeah.
freaking story.
Yeah. When they think this is where it's like helpful if somebody can get their own perspective on it, right? Because it's like you could be like, oh my gosh, we're on the losing team. This is terrible. Um, or you could just be like, okay, well, yeah, we're losing right now. But if I stay in the game, it means I'm not losing anymore. Like you haven't lost yet. You haven't
Yeah.
decided to quit the game and like
Yeah.
get yourself out of it. Well, and it's even wild to think about. Like it's wild to think about like just 2 episodes. Hannah was deciding to leave. It feels like the game has progressed so much since that very first episode.
So much. And I think that once the tribes, I think it'll be so interesting to see how the tribes split, because people from the yellow tribe are going to be picked off or they're going to be instrumental swing votes,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Well, and I think there's always a bottom of some tribe. Like, even though red
Yeah.
and the blue haven't been tested yet, there are people that like, I think it's at the red tribe where Sifu is on that tribe. And like, he was this episode thrown under the bus when Caleb and Austin were like digging for the idol. And then, Dee and I don't remember the other woman's name came along and they're supposed to be in this this group, they're supposed to be aligned. And, and they're like, what are you up to? My intuition tells me something's off here. And it's just like, oh, yeah, well, we saw seafood digging here. So that guy's been thrown under the bus. He's obviously at the bottom of that tribe. So it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
who are his people? Well, it sounds like he's going to find new people because the red tribe seems pretty ready to throw him under the bus.
Yeah. Yeah. Or wrong place, or he's in the wrong place at the wrong time. But I don't,
Yeah.
they haven't shown him much at all. I don't know who he's aligned with. They haven't showed many of his conversations.
I'm interested to see more of him. The bits that they have shown are intriguing to me. I think they also said at one point that like he is like a Tai Chi master, which to me, I'm just like, okay, he is probably gonna be one of the steadiest people on the show just because he's so like used to like being in this different like headspace where things from the like don't phase him probably as much, and
Yeah.
so he might be able to keep his cool when you have all this decision fatigue, when your nervous system is like out of whack. Like he might be the one
Yeah.
person who's well grounded. We just haven't seen much of him yet, but I'm excited to
Yeah.
because like there's just these players where I'm like, who is that person? I don't even know who that is, so I'm
I
assuming we'll
was,
see more of them next week.
yeah, I will say one thing about Survivor. Usually when they haven't shown somebody, it means they last a long time.
Oh,
Yes, I have found that because they have way more footage to be shown. Like usually if they haven't shown somebody, it's not because they get voted off. It's just because there's like so much more to come from them. That's what I have found.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because at this point, do you have anybody picked out who you're like, maybe they'll win?
Oh gosh, so early. I have
I
some
know.
favorites. I have some
Who are
favorites.
your favorites? We'll go
Um,
with that.
yeah. I like Kelly and Brando.
Yes.
I think Kelly and Brando. And oh, and I really like she's the human rights lawyer, the civil rights lawyer.
Oh,
I really like her. I forgot, I don't know her name. That starts with a K.
it's okay. Yeah. Yeah, I
You know what
like
I'm
her
talking
too.
about?
I think she is such a smooth operator when she like was just like, okay, I'm not telling people I'm a lawyer. And then she's like so doe-eyed to like whatever his name is, John or whatever. She's just like, what is it like to be a lawyer? And I was like,
Yes,
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 girl,
Luke.
get it.
She said it to Luke. I think his name is
Yes.
Luke.
Yeah.
She's like,
And I was
yes,
like,
tell me
that's
about
so
being a
good.
lawyer. I know she was really funny. I like her a lot.
I
What
love
about,
it.
what about you?
Yeah. I like I said, I want to see more of Sifu because the bits that they have shown are pretty hilarious and awesome. I want to see more of him. I am curious to see more from Emily. I think her story is intriguing. I think her changes are genuine. Like I think I was surprised to see for her like her heart on her sleeve so much so early because she struck me as somebody who is going to just be like very like closed off or just like really hard to get along with. And now we see like so many different sides from her right away. Um, I'm it's just hard to say. We haven't seen a lot from other people. There's nobody that I really am just like, I don't like them and I want to see them go because I think they bring such different things to the game. Like even Bruce, who they're painting as being this very annoying person right now, it's like I still want to see like if he evolves as a player, if there's any self-awareness there that the drunk uncle act isn't really working for everyone. It's working for some of them, but not all of them. So I don't know. Ask me in 2 weeks and we'll see. Like there's always the two or three people where I'm like, I'm gonna be so sad when you are voted out, but you will be because you are awesome. And yeah. But I mean,
Yeah.
last season, season 44 was one of the best I've ever seen on Survivor. And I thought at the very end, I was like, wow, it's just amazing to get to the point where everybody I feel like is deserving. Like I
Yeah.
think like it was a final five where I would be happy with any of you. And that's typically not the case. There's usually somebody that's just like brought along for the ride and just seems like an easy person to vote off at the tail end. And it seems like we're trending towards that not happening in Survivor. Like people want to have someone who's like deserving at the end, which makes for a much better show to watch.
Yes, agreed. I loved the final people last year. I felt like everyone was super deserving.
Yes.
It was
So
super
we'll see
fun.
what happens. Any final thoughts before we wrap it up for today, Lauren?
No, but this was so fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming back on. It's a very different conversation than talking about Bachelorette, which is the one you were on before this. So,
I could talk about
yes,
Survivor any day, all day.
same, same. Okay, so if somebody wanted to find you online, where would they go looking?
Um, LaurenRapaport.com. That's
Yes,
Rapaport.
perfect.
LaurenRapaport.com.
I will put that in the show notes for humans. So, well, thank you again, Lauren, for coming in and filling in last minute.
Thank you.